Of all the rankings I've done on this channel over the last 3 years, I've never ranked out my favorite manufacturers. After picking up 83 new credits this year, I think it's about time. This isn't even something I've given much thought to, so it wasn't that easy to pit everyone against each other, but I think I came up with a good list, so here we go. These are my top 10 coaster manufacturers. One thing I did to help me was to filter my coaster count list to see how many manufacturers ended up in my top 50, and then my top 100. I'm also basing this on my experience, not the manufacturer as a whole. So some of these may do better in Europe than America, so I'm gonna rank those lower. You're gonna see one example of that right off the bat. Number 10, Mack Rides. This German manufacturer is doing great work all over the world. They wowed us with their Hypercoaster model and Extreme Spinner, as well as their launch looping coasters. In America, we've only gotten a taste of that. They only have one coaster in my top 50, the amazing Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, and the only other coaster that cracks my top 100 is Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. Every single one of the other 18 Mack Rides coasters that I've ridden are geared towards families. Sierra Sidewinder, Manta, Cobra's Curse, and a whole bunch of Wild Mouse coasters. I see the potential here, and I expect Mack Rides to fly up my list in the future, but for now, it barely cracks my top 10, and it was a close race with a few others for this spot. Number 9, Gerstlauer. This is another German manufacturer, and I've said they were overrated in the past. I stand by that. They've also done some amazing work outside of America, including Carnan at Hansa Park and Takabisha at Fuji-Q Highland, and we were lucky enough to get a near clone of that in the US. TMNT Shellraiser at Nickelodeon Universe, the only Gerstlauer in my top 50. But there are 3 others in my top 100. This includes Mystery Mine, Hang Time, and a coaster that I just got to ride that boosted my opinion of Gerstlauer big time, Monster at Adventureland. This showed me just how good an infinity coaster can be. I've ridden 19 Gerstlauers now, and I also picked up SpongeBob SquarePants at Mall of America, which wasn't top 100 worthy, but it was also impressive, along with Hydrus and the other Eurofighters, which are great for smaller parks. I also really enjoy their spinning coaster model. Number 8, Custom Coasters International, or CCI. I was a big CCI fanboy when I was younger. I just thought all the coolest wooden coasters were CCIs. This included my number 1 coaster at the time, Ghost Rider, but also Raven, Boulder Dash, Villain, The Boss, and Shivering Timbers. Over the years, I've ridden 21 coasters from CCI, and they've lost some of their shine. Ghost Rider and Shivering Timbers cracked my top 50, with Cornball Express and Boulder Dash in my top 100. One thing that hurts some of the bigger CCIs is their trains. They relied heavily on PTC trains with those ratcheting lap bars, and I seem to like those less and less every time I ride them. Some have buzz bars, like Cornball Express, and those are some of the best restraints ever. And Ghost Rider got Millennium Flyers after its GCI retrack in 2016, and those are also great. CCI has been defunct for almost 20 years now, so these days, all their coasters seem to run a little rough, so they're no longer my favorite wooden coaster manufacturer. Number 7, Premier Rides. Here's the only manufacturer on my list that failed to crack my top 50, so why did they get a spot ahead of the last 3? Premier does not make bad rides. My least favorite of the 20 that I've ridden is the only coaster that doesn't have a launch, Runaway Mountain at Six Flags Over Texas, and that ride's still a lot of fun. Their rides are all glossy smooth, featuring launches and inversions, and usually some very good airtime moments. They also tend to be short and clonable, so despite there being no Premier Rides coasters in my top 50, 4 of them do land in my top 100. The best of them are the Mr. Freeze clones. These are crazy intense shuttle coasters, and they feature a 200-foot backwards vertical spike. And West Coast Racers and Skyrocket are newer additions to my list, and they bolster how good Premier Rides coasters can be. Their most common model is the Skyrocket 2, a short but great display of forces, strong positives, strong negatives, strong laterals, and hang time. Number 6, Great Coasters International, or GCI. I never thought I'd rank GCI over CCI. Back when I was fanboying over CCI, those GCI twisters did not impress me at all. I was familiar with Roar at Six Flags Marine World, and I didn't like it that much. But GCI has gotten better and better over the years, and I have 14 on my list now. They have 3 coasters in my top 50, Mystic Timbers being all the way up in my top 20, and Renegade and Gold Striker hanging on in the 40s. American Thunder was in my top 50 for a few years, but barely got pushed out, with Thunderhead recently getting pushed out of my top 100. GCI doesn't always hit a home run. A lot of their older stuff is either rough or boring, and I didn't like Texas Stingray all that much. But when they get it right, they get it right. And those 3 in my top 50, plus American Thunder, prove that out. GCI has also done a lot of great work overseas, and I hope to check that out someday. Number 5, Aerodynamics. Aero was so huge back in the 70s and 80s, responsible for 47 coasters on my list, the 3rd most of any manufacturer. 2 of these coasters are in my top 50, but it's worth noting, both of these are in my top 15, Magnum XL200 and X2. only one other coaster cracks my top 100, and that's Gemini. Only 3 coasters in my top 100 out of 47. That's kinda weak, right? Not really. Arrow is very deep with their solid coasters that stand the test of time. Tennessee Tornado, Viper, The Bat, Loch Ness Monster, Excalibur, Diamondback. These coasters go way back, and they're still great rides, and there's a lot of variety in there. Arrow was the great innovator of their time, making the first steel tubular track coaster in Matterhorn, the first modern inverting coaster in Corkscrew, and their last coaster was the first 4th dimension coaster, X. Still one of the best rides I've ever been on. They've been gone for almost 20 years now, but their legacy lives on, even as we lose pieces of them little by little. Number 4, the Gravity Group. After taking a look at my list, Gravity Group has got to be the top wooden coaster manufacturer. Their portfolio isn't quite as big as the others, so I've only tallied 9 on my list. Of those 9, 6 are in my top 100, with 3 in my top 50. 2 of those top 50 coasters are their first 2 coasters ever, Voyage and Hades. These are massive, ambitious projects. Over 6,000 feet on the Voyage, built into a hillside, and a massive tunnel under the parking lot for Hades, later on adding a corkscrew into its layout. Gravity Group is not afraid to take chances, as we saw with another coaster in my top 100, Switchback. This is the only wooden shuttle coaster, crammed into the smallest space imaginable. You also have Sip and Pippin, Mindblower, and Ravine Flyer 2, and those are airtime machines. The Gravity Group has also revolutionized the family wooden coaster, building these 40-footers with good airtime that kids and adults can enjoy. Number 3, Intamin. I struggle with this one, but I had to slide Intamin down to the 3rd spot, even with their 5 top 50 coasters and 14 in the top 100. It makes sense. That's far fewer than my picks for number 1 and number 2, but when Intamin gets it right, they absolutely nail it. 2 of those 5 are in my top 10, El Toro and Velocicoaster, with Superman the Ride, Millennium Force, and Maverick all cracking my top 50. For as crazy as Intamin likes to make their rides, just 5 out of 37 were top 50 worthy, but a lot more qualified for that second tier. Intamin doesn't always get it right. They are responsible for Green Lantern First Flight after all, and even though Skyrush comes close to my top 100, those lap bars are just terrible. Those top 100 coasters have some great variety, including extreme launches, extreme height, and some legendary straight track. I honestly want to put this higher just for El Toro and Velocicoaster, some of the most innovative and impressive coasters I've ever ridden, but the 2 that edge it out do it a little better. Number 2, Bolliger and Mabillard, or B&M. Ever since this Swiss duo broke onto the scene in 1990, they flooded the world with all kinds of coasters. The track may look the same, but they'll put you on top of it, with or without a floor, underneath it, and on the side of it. Some with vertical drops, most with inversions, but some without. I've ridden 64 B&Ms, by far the most of any manufacturer, and every single one currently operating in the USA. 14 of them cracked my top 50, and you can tack on 17 more for my top 100, so nearly 1 out of 3 coasters in my top 100 come from B&M. It seems like B&M should be the slam dunk pick for number 1, right? Well, it does benefit from its massive quantity, and the quality isn't always there. There's a lot of B&Ms out there that are rough or boring or just okay. Nothing special. This usually describes their flowless or their stand-up coasters, with a lot of their early work being on the smaller side, and not really living up to today's standards. I'm a sucker for their non-inverting models, their Gigas and their Hypers. They're chock full of airtime and speed, with those amazing clamshell lap bars where you get to feel all the airtime. All 12 are in my top 100, all but 1 in my top 50. Their best looping model is their inverted coaster, accounting for 7 in my top 100. There are also 4 of the best flowless coasters in there, a few dives, a couple flyers, and a wing coaster for good measure. B&M is so well-rounded, and even though they don't offer the same extreme forces, or take the chances of Intamin, their body of work deserves my number 2 spot. Number 1, Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC. Until recently, all 14 RMCs on my list were in my top 50. Then I rode Jersey Devil, and that wasn't even worthy for my top 100. But I won't let that take away from the rest of the RMC masterpieces scattered throughout the country. These were made for coaster enthusiasts. Their layouts are basically ejector airtime and whippy inversions. They're also glossy smooth, which also makes the general public love them. RMC came along right when parks were recovering from the Great Recession, offering a cheap option to turn an aging wooden coaster into the best coaster in the park. Six Flags jumped at this chance, and those make up 9 of the 14, including top 10 masterpieces, Wicked Cyclone and Twisted Colossus. Cedar Fair joined the fun later on, and RMC and Cedar Point worked together to build what I consider the perfect coaster, Steel Vengeance, the first hyper hybrid and the world record holder for most airtime. RMC has done hybrid conversions, ground up wooden topper track coasters, ground up hybrids, and single rail coasters. These are so extreme it doesn't even seem possible. RMC is a different breed. They have their niche and they stick to it. It also just happens to be my favorite type of coaster, smooth and whippy with an abundance of airtime. There's no way I can't put this in the top spot. Let me talk about a few that couldn't crack this list. SNS has done some amazing work with their launch coasters. But their newest coasters were kinda disappointing to me. Powder Keg and Gale Force cracked my top 100, but they haven't done anything top 50 worthy. PTC goes way back to the early 1900s, and although they have a lot of solid coasters and standouts with Phoenix and Comet, they don't have enough for my top 10. Schwarzkopf was a pioneer back in the 70s with their looping coasters, but their top coaster for me falls just outside my top 100, Shockwave at Over Texas. Finally, there's Vekoma. I really enjoyed their Flying Dutchman and giant inverted boomerangs, but there's not much else to get excited about in America. Well, not yet. If this was a ranking of manufacturers worldwide, Vekoma makes this list. They've been crushing it over the last 5 years in Europe and Asia, but it hasn't materialized yet in America. Until I get on some of those awesome looking new age coasters, I can't put them in my top 10. So there you have it. Let me know what you think about this list, and which one you would put on top of your list. Where do you agree or disagree with me? Maybe based on your own experience, especially for those of you outside of America who may have a much higher opinion of Gerstlauer, Mach Rides, and Vekoma. Sound off in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. That's the best way to show your support for the channel. And if you're new here and love coasters and countdowns, be sure to sub for more content just like this. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, where you can chat with other fans of the channel, as well as my second channel, where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.